hear from. And with that, I'll turn it over to Coach.
All right. Quick opening statement here. Thanks again for being with us, and look forward to the day that we can be together in person. We've been very productive here on and off the field. We wrapped up camp last night. Our players have now started classes here at Wake Forest, and we're very excited that we could begin residential campus life here. And we just hope that our players and all the students at Wake can be very diligent and disciplined and wear masks so we can stay at Wake Forest. We had a voter registration event last week that was very successful. We're continuing to encourage our players to have a voice in the upcoming election. So again, like I said, there's productivity on and off the field. As everybody knows and is well aware of, Sage Surratt had made a decision to opt out for this year. These are certainly unusual times, and I know this was a very hard decision for Sage and his family. We think the world of Sage. He was first class in everything that he did on and off the field. He was a great competitor, and there is nothing but love and support for Sage. We think the world of him and look forward to watching all of his future successes in football, and then his life after football, which I'm sure will be equally as successful. We're starting to get excited. We're about 2.5 weeks away from the first game. I think there's greater optimism than ever that we are going to play games. We certainly are full speed ahead with our preparation. We've now had 2 full padded practices. We gave the team today off because they started classes, and we really want them to be completely focused on their academics today for the first day of school. We'll resume practices tomorrow. We're planning on having a scrimmage on Saturday, and we're starting to get ready. Next week, we'll start beginning our game prep for Clemson. So like I said, we're looking forward to it. We're excited, and it's been a long road to get here, and we hope we can just sustain and keep our team healthy, both from a COVID standpoint and an injury standpoint, as we kick off a very unusual 2020 season. So with that, I'll take questions.
Connor, go ahead.
Yeah, Dave, you just kind of touched on it, but what's the adjustment without Sage for the offense, and what's wide receiver look like at this point?
I still think wide receiver is a very strong position for us. Donovan Green is coming along and developing nicely, especially after the end of last year. He got to play a little bit and got some confidence, and he has certainly resumed his progression and looks really good. Torian Perry and Nolan Gruel so far have had really good camps. Ja'Cory Roberson and Taylor Marin have done a really nice job in the slot. Jamal Banks and Donald Stewart are 2 guys on the outside that we expect to improve and keep getting better. So it's funny, you look at what we lost. So right now, we're not starting one skilled player that we did a year ago. We have a new quarterback, a new tight end, 3 new receivers, and a new starting tailback. And yet I feel really good about our offensive skill. I think it's a position of strength on our football team. Now, it's inexperienced, but the talent is there. I think as those guys play and get better, we have a lot of upside in that group. So, again, we would have loved to have Sage this year. We understand his decision, but we still feel we're very good at wide receiver.
If I could follow up, did you have any contingencies for this happening? Did you have anything? I know you put things in place if this person can't go or if this person can't go. Were any of those in place if Sage were to reach the decision that he ultimately came to?
Well, we didn't talk about what if this guy opts out or this guy opts out. You always have contingencies for injuries, or this year if somebody got COVID or was part of contact tracing. So we had we're prepared to lose everybody. I mean, anybody on our roster, at any point now, if you fail a COVID test or you're part of contact tracing, you're going to miss games. So we've structured our reps differently this camp. We did separate practices to give younger players more reps. The extra eligibility rule will be helpful because now we don't have to take somebody who would maybe be a one-unit starter on special teams and not play them. Now we have the ability to play that player, and they're not going to lose a year of eligibility. So again, it's completely different. It's unique. It's different. There's never been a year like this, and we're just going to rock and roll with the punches. And managing this and not losing our mind about things that may occur or may not occur. I just think you line up week to week, and we're going to do the very best we can. But having said that, even with Sage not here, I think if you guys were here watching our practices, if that was allowed, you guys would be raving about all the progress that Donovan, Atorian, and Nolan have made. So we feel those are three very good players on the outside. And again, Sage was an all-conference player. I'm not going to say we're certainly going to miss him, but I think if you look at our football team, I don't view that as a position of weakness.
Josh, go ahead.
I was thinking about the eligibility rule you were just talking about, because I remember in Charlotte a few years ago, you said that Wake Forest might benefit from it more than anybody in the country. So I'm interested in what you make of the NCAA's ruling last week that regardless if you play in the fall or the spring, that it's not going to count against your 4-year clock. How exactly do you think that affects you guys big picture?
Like I said, I think this rule, I'm going to look at the very bright and optimistic side of it. I think the way we run our program, that eligibility rule helps us as much as anybody. One of the things that we've done here, one of our formulas for success, is that we have redshirted every year about 2/3 of the class. And it has helped us because if you look at some of the production of our fifth-year players, whether it be last year, I mean, look at all the guys that signed NFL contracts and how many of them were fifth-year players. And if those guys had left after 4 years, they probably weren't all conference or all ACC players. The negative of doing that is there's a percentage of our roster every year that we don't have access to that other teams do that don't redshirt as much. So to have access to some of those younger players, whether it be a Jamal Banks or whether it be a Keyshawn Williams or whether it be Kalen Carson or J.J. Roberts or a number of young, good players who are freshmen, that we may be able to use those guys on special teams now and make them a 1-unit or a 2-unit starter on special team, and then not worry about that we're losing a year of their eligibility and not getting that 5th year. So that's, like I said, we now have access to our entire roster, which we normally don't do. Now, thank goodness we don't do that, or we never would have had Jake Benzinger in a 5th year, or Justin Haran in a 6th year, or Nate Gilliam in a 5th year. I mean, those have been our best players. And now, that's we don't have to worry about that until next year now with some of those decisions. So we had a staff meeting today, and there were 1 or 2 freshmen that we said that they would be 1-unit starters on special teams. Well, normally I'd say, well, no, you can't do that. We're not going to burn a year of eligibility for a 1-unit starter. Now that guy is traveling. He's a 1-unit starter. He's a 3-unit backup. He's going to get reps with the varsity, and that'll just help his development, and we're not burning a year.
To follow, though, how special is it for someone like Sam, his situation, where he started 2 years ago. He was able to redshirt last year, and this year is not going to count against his eligibility either. I mean, obviously you haven't dealt with anything like that in your coaching career, but how special is this for him?
Well, for the guys we've redshirted, we're going to get a 6th year. But I'm sure in their minds, if they have the years they want in years 3 and 4, with some of those guys, we'll never get to a 6th year. I don't think Boogie Basham right now is thinking, hey, great, I'll come back in 21. But for some of our seniors who didn't redshirt, or maybe who are starting for the first time, if they have a good year and they're maybe a free agent or a late round draft pick, maybe that 5th or 6th year really helps them become NFL players. So again, I told those guys, listen, don't make any decision now. Let's see what happens in 20. Let's see how many games we play. Let's see if we get through a full season. And these are all issues that we can deal with in December, when you guys have a much better feeling about where you stand with things. So I think they're all excited about it. But you know, those are decisions for the seniors that they'll have to figure things out in December. And for our freshmen, they'll have to figure them out in 4 or 5 years.
Thanks, Coach.
Les, go ahead.
Knowing how analytical you treat this game and your program, I know going into spring camp, you had designated numbers of players you wanted to have ready going into game 1. And obviously only 5 spring camp practices that you were able to use. Did that whole system and that whole plan get kind of flushed down the toilet with everything else that happened? Or did it maybe even become more important?
It becomes more important because by missing all those months, I don't think we're in the same physical conditioning shape that we would normally be. I mean, Brandon Horgan does an incredible job with our strength and conditioning program. And to think that our players are going to miss 4 months of being with Brandon and be the same physically isn't the case. So I think it's probably even more important that we have depth. A player's ability to play 60, 70, 80 plays in a game is going to be a lot tougher because of all the time they missed. So I think the depth issue becomes more important, but the eligibility rule helps solve part of that problem. So we're practicing differently. We're dividing the reps differently. There's a lot of different approaches that we've taken to this. And, you know, I'm surprised, Les, that you say I'm analytical. I thought you've always described me as emotional, off the cuff, and somebody who's more reactive. So that's kind of nice to hear that I have an analytical side too.
Surprise, surprise. How close are you to hitting those marks? And did the marks get changed any during the summer?
No, we're closer to hitting those marks in most positions. The marks that are going to be challenging to hit are in the O-line just because of what we lost, and in the secondary because of what we lost. But I think at receiver, we're going to hit those marks. At quarterback, running back, we're going to hit those marks. At linebacker and the defensive line, we're going to hit those marks. And by hitting those marks at linebacker, at tight end, and running back, those allow you to make your special teams a lot better too.
Lauren, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, thanks for the time today. You said you're prepared to lose anyone just with the volatility of the COVID situation. How does that affect your game plan, let's say against Clemson? Because yes, you hope the next guy in the depth chart can step up, but certainly you're picturing specific matchups with certain players.
Yeah, I think you have to go into it thinking you're going to have your starters. And when I said I'm prepared to lose anyone, I just think from with all the COVID testing going on, at any point, the second that one player is COVID positive, you're probably going to lose 3 or 4 other players because of contact tracing. So I don't want to lose anyone, but for us to think that, usually there's certain players that are relatively healthy and they can play a lot of reps and they can sustain it. And other guys are a little bit more injury prone. COVID isn't dictated by that. Anybody can get COVID. So just one of the things we talk about, like today we had a drill, yesterday we had a 2-minute drive. And we're going to go kick the game-winning field goal in practice. And I said, nope. Skiba's out with COVID. Next guy up, you've got to hit the game-winning field goal. Those things can happen. So I think I've told every player, it used to be that 2s have to have the preparation and mindset that they're 1s. And now I think you can extend that to 3 or 4s. Because if the 1 gets it, there's a chance the 2's in contact tracing, and now the 3's the 1. So it just getting these players prepared that whatever roles you come out of camp with, that role can change quicker, drastically, for more reasons than ever before.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Connor.
Dave, you're just telling Les that with missing those 4 months with Brandon, it was going to be even more difficult to play X number of plays per game. without giving away the farm here, does that give you pause on wanting to run 80 to 90 plays offensively a game?
You know, I'm going to answer that question in a very nondescript, you know, I'm going to just talk in circles and not answer the question. Why would I share that?
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. So we'll play
Les,
it.
go ahead.
We'll play it as it goes.
Dave, you talked about one of the areas in which there's still some numbers to hit is at cornerback. What have you seen back there thus far? I have to imagine that Jasir Taylor is firmly in the mix, but I have no clue who's back there beside him right now.
Jasir Taylor is more than in the mix. He's the one firm starter. He has had a great camp. He's a guy that I think through the pandemic did work hard. His conditioning level's good. He is really becoming a leader, and he's going to be, I think, a very, very good cornerback for us this year. And he's played a lot of football. So we're really excited about Jasir. The battle right now is really for the other position. And we have a number of players that are playing well and getting reps there and getting better. And that is one of the competitions that's going to go on probably through the last scrimmage is who's going to be the other starting corner.
Just how many scrimmages do you have on the schedule now at this point?
Well, we did what I would call a depth scrimmage last week on Saturday that we basically took out most of the fifth-year players and all the players that played 400 or 500 snaps or more a year ago. They didn't scrimmage. And we got all the guys that haven't played that many snaps, and they got in about a 60-play scrimmage. We did a little bit of scrimmaging yesterday. We got about 25 live reps in. And then we'll scrimmage Saturday, and that will be the last scrimmage. So the whole approach has been different. You know, we didn't have – usually we have 2 big scrimmages in camp, and we've kind of had mini scrimmages. And we'll do little live periods. But I just didn't want to go out there and have guys run 40, 50, 60 plays until I felt better about the conditioning level. And it's, you know, we're 2 weeks away on Saturday, so we've got to get to that point and stretch it a little bit. But at the same time, you know, we have a lot of guys, especially in defense, that have played a lot of football. So I trust that those guys know what they need to do to get ready. They understand what it's like to play in a game. I mean, Boogie Basham, Suleiman Kamara, Ja'Cory Johns, Jaquez Williams, Ryan Smenda, Luke Masterson, Trey Red, Nasir Greer, Jasir Taylor. Those guys have all played a lot of football here. And so we don't need to put those guys out for a scrimmage and give them 50, 60, 70 plays. You know, if I can get them, you know, 20 or 30 and condition them a little bit, I think they'll be good to go.
Aaron, go ahead.
Hey, Dave, good to see you again in virtual format, I guess. Some schools, I guess, are doing cross-training them up, guys in different positions, maybe trying to have a guy that could pivot into another role because not just injuries, but COVID. I know that's not a unique thing necessarily, but it does seem like it would have extra value now. Are you guys doing any of that, and how important do you think that could be if you are?
We're doing a little bit of it. We have some safeties that are getting corner reps. We have some safeties that maybe are getting some linebacker reps. You know, our receivers are going to have to learn multiple positions. Offensive linemen, almost everybody's learning 2 positions. Almost all the guards are learning tackle. All the centers are learning tackle. Zach Tom can play tackle and center. You know, to some degree, you do a little bit of that every year. Again, but because of COVID, we're probably doing more of it than ever before. There's just a lot more what ifs. That used to be the what if was an injury. And now because of the threat of COVID or contact tracing, it's what if injury or COVID or contact tracing. So the odds that we're going to get to those scenarios to me are certainly greater than they would be normally in a year.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
You're welcome.
Dave, how has Sam looked to you? I mean, that's
Oh, he's looked really good. I mean, just not even totally different player than 2 years ago in terms of his weight, his strength, his athleticism, his confidence, his command of the offense. I mean, he played really well last year, Connor, when he played. I mean, the Florida State game, I mean, he didn't necessarily play well that game, but he was the winning quarterback. The Syracuse game, when he went in there, I thought he played outstanding. And he practiced really well last year. So he looks like an ACC starting quarterback right now, and feel really good about him. But I also feel really good about Michael Kern and Mitch Griffiths. Those guys, with the split practices, those guys have gotten so many more reps than they normally would have. And quarterback's always a high rep position, especially in our offense, that you got to get those players reps. So we've manufactured reps for all of our players, but there's no position that benefits more than the quarterback position.
How much more comfortable are you with Sam from where he was 2 years ago weight-wise and being able to kind of take some punishing hits, especially with the team that got shifted into your season opener now?
Again, we played his freshman year. I mean, we might have said he was 180, and he probably was in the 170s. And now he's a legit, he's somewhere between 210 and 220, and he holds it well, and he's moving better than he did when he was 40 pounds lighter. So that is somebody that loves football, works extremely hard at it. It's really important to him. And, you make this analogy, but sometimes you don't appreciate something until you lost it. And I think the fact that he lost his starting job and now has it again, really appreciates it and values it. And his work ethic has been outstanding, his competitiveness. He understands the courage that it takes to play quarterback in this league when some elite pass rushers are coming at you. And he has done a really good job of that so far. I feel very good about where we are at that position.
Lauren, go ahead.
I can't help but find myself picturing a packed football stadium this fall, but that, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like for you guys at Wake, but for Duke, they won't have any fans there. So how are you preparing just yourself as a coach as well as your guys to potentially play in empty stadiums?
I'm not playing music as practice as much anymore. We used to always play during periods music to prepare for fan noise, so we don't have to play that now. That's really it. Yeah, I think the communication should be better. You're going to have an easier time hearing signals and hearing cadences. And we spend a lot of work when we play a Virginia Tech or an NC State or a Clemson of, third down when you're on the road, managing sound and having a silent count. And those are things now we don't have to cover. So there is a strategic part to it. I would prefer to have to coach those things and have full stadiums and full crowds. But hopefully that's something we can look forward to in 2021.
Les, go ahead.
But Lauren, if you envision big crowds and seeing things like that, Wake Forest has a promotional thing going on that you can get a cutout and purchase one, and we can put you in there permanently, and you can help fill Truist Field.
I hope I can actually be there covering it in person, but if not, I'll consider the cutout.
Well, it'd be really cool to have two of you there, a real Lauren and a virtual Lauren.
I'm flattered. Maybe we'll fill the
Well,
stadium.
can we work out some type of deal for our covering media that maybe we, instead of $50, we charge them $48, but we promise to make it up with 7 lunches if they come to press conferences?
I think that's a fair trade.
So it would be a net positive for everybody on the call.
That sounds good.
I guess we have a purchase there. There's one.
Dave, I've got 2 things. One, you talked about the young quarterbacks getting more work in under this current system. Is this maybe something that will carry over into future years for you? And then my second question is, although I hope to talk to Coach Hunter at some point, how would you break down the running back position right now?
So to answer your first question Anytime you guys give me a two-part question, I'm starting to get older now, so the odds that I'll remember the second question are going down every year. So your first question is, will I do this every year? It'll be tougher because this year there was not a limit on how many players we could invite to camp. So usually we're only allowed to invite 110 players to camp. This year, because they did not want to add players after our players went through quarantine, we have 123 players here. So that's allowed us to have a full 3 deep and a full 4 deep and extend more reps and run more reps with the 2s and the 3s and the 4, which has helped. If they go back to the 110 limit, that will be challenging. And part 2 of your question is running backs. Yeah, that's a small victory, I remembered. I would say that Christian Beal-Smith and Kenneth Walker have both looked really good. Some younger players are coming on, certainly Quentin Cooley, Justice Ellison, and Amari are all, they're all looking good. So I think right now the depth chart is where we would like it. Now we just got to try to keep those guys healthy. So like I said, I think it's ideal, that we have the 3 players, the 2 players that we expected back are practicing well, and Christian and Kenneth, and then the 3 freshmen we brought in, Amani Marshall, Justice Ellison, and Quentin Cooley have benefited from all the reps we're able to give them. Their rep count is way up, and that's what young players need. They need reps. It's hard to get ready for a game when you don't get practice reps, and we've been able to produce way more of those reps this year than ever before.
Aaron, and then we'll come to you, Eddie.
Dave, I'm tempted to ask you a 2-part question just to test you again, but I'll let you stay on that one you got right. I do think, though, when you're in preseason, there's a little bit of a projection of what you think your team could be. Like you feel like you've got guys coming back, okay, we should be this kind of team, but until they play, you don't know. Do you have is it a harder projection to make with this group because, the offseason's been so altered, like you said, the strength conditioning part of it and so forth? Do you have a good handle on what kind of group this could be amid everything going on?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. We're very experienced on defense. We have depth in the front 7, and we're going to have to count on those guys to play at a high level as the secondary grows up. We're very inexperienced on the offensive perimeter, but we have good talent, and good players make plays. And will Nolan Gruel and Atorian Perry and Donovan Green be where Sage Surratt and Scotty Washington were at midseason next year? No, not at the beginning of the year. But my hope is as they play games and they develop, that I think they're really good football players. So, all those guys, Sage, his second year, his redshirt freshman year progressively got better. Scotty progressively got better. Last year, right, we didn't have a chance. Greg Dortch left. We didn't have a slot. There's nobody there. And then Kendall Hinton ends up being an NFL player. So, how do you address those things? Well, you recruit. And when guys leave, you hope that the next player, Corey Roberson's been waiting 4 years for this. Taylor Marin has worked really hard, and he's playing really well. And I think at the end of the year, those guys will be good players. Now, without spring football and all the time we missed, where are we going to be weeks 1, 2, and 3? I think that'll be really interesting. But I'm very confident that those guys will get there, and the sooner the better. And it's certainly going to be baptism by fire. So last year, the first start Donovan Green and Atorian Perry ever made was against Clemson, because we were down Sage and we were down Scotty. And they learned the hard way how hard it is to play in the ACC against a team like Clemson. So I look back now and, I'd have loved to have Scotty and Sage for that game a year ago. But now maybe there's a benefit that Atorian and Donovan played in that game. They watched that film. They saw they weren't ready. Okay, how much better have you gotten?
Eddie, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. With everything that has changed with the altered schedule, how was the second scrimmage? Were you happy with how things turned out last night when the team progressed?
Well, we only did a limited scrimmage. We got in about 20, 25 scrimmage plays, and it was physical. It was crisp. One of my hopes was we waited to put on the full pads. That's one of those things that you want the players anxious to do that. You want them excited about it. And they kept asking for it and asking for it. Whereas if you pull in the full pads early, they're always asking to go uppers. So I think it was good that they were all excited to play tackle football. And I thought it was really good. It was loud. The enthusiasm level of our players, their attention, their want to be out there. In some ways, because of the longer camp, we could spread things out. I think they're fresher now than they would be in a normal camp.
Following up on that, Coach, you talked about that excitement level. Will it be a kind of a sigh of relief when Clemson comes to town in 2 weeks that the football season is finally here?
Yeah, this will be the quote, sigh of relief when Clemson, come on. You're like setting me up like Connor now.
Been around him too much.
Yeah, that was Eddie's quote, not mine for the record.
But just to get the season started, the actual season.
I think there will be great relief when we finally play a game that we know all this work and all this effort wasn't for nothing. I mean, it's been a hard 7 weeks, and we have asked our players to make sacrifices that in the sport of college football has never been asked by players before. And so far, we're managing all these things well. You know, our players deserve the reward of a game if they can continue this discipline. So it'll be excitement. I think when we take the field against Clemson, that we're going to be excited, and it's going to be a great feeling of accomplishment that, hey, we were able to do this. And now the big challenge is, are we going to be able to continue to do it? So this, at no point is this virus going to be defeated this season. So we have every week a weekly opponent, and we have another very, very strong opponent that is undefeated right now. And again, I always want to win football games, and we're always going to be competitive. This is a year that I view keeping our players safe and healthy and continually educating them on COVID to keep them as healthy as we can, as if not more important, probably more important than winning football games. That I don't know. All these young men are someone's sons, and we are just obsessing with every detail of making this the safest environment we can possibly make it for our student athletes. And so I do not want to let down our guard or get reckless. And if it's not safe for a player to play, he is not going to play. And, you know, if we lose a game because of it, but we kept a player safe from COVID, that's a trade-off that I'm certainly willing to make, and I know Wake Forest Athletics is willing to make. This is not going to be a normal year.
Les, go ahead.
Hey, I've got a 3-part question. No, I'm just joking.
3 parts with 6 subsets.
Along those lines of not being a normal season, do you have any thoughts on the move today with NC State pushing their opener to September 26th? And now it looks like, you know, you guys will be their season opener.
Like I said, this year, you just rock and roll. I'm sure that's not going to be the first game postponed or pushed back or rescheduled. And it's not a normal year. So to say, well, you know, is it fair? I mean, if we can play games this year, it's going to be a success. And obviously when we play them, we want to win them and play them well. You know, but I feel for Dave and his staff. I mean, I'm sure they've done a lot and they've worked hard. And now it's another week before they get to play. And now they can't practice. So everybody's going to have their own challenges. At some point, we may go through that. I hope not. But if you don't go through that this year, that might be unique and infrequent.
Is that something you share with your team to reiterate the importance of following these protocols?
Yeah, I just tell them that, they should interact with everybody, assuming that that person has COVID. Just assume everybody that you're interacting with has COVID. And then if they do get COVID, you can say, I always had a mask on. I was always greater than 6 feet away. And you'll be able to go to bed at night, not worrying whether you have it. And so everybody has a personal responsibility in this. And we're not putting all of our players in one hotel. We don't have security guards making sure they don't leave and do things. If they want to play football this season, they're going to do the right things. And if they don't, then all of us will pay for it. And that's where we're different than the NBA. We're not in a bubble. These are not professional athletes. Our players are going to class today. And I just, if they're worried about the other students, I would be worried about everybody. And I go around our office assuming that everybody has it. And if I take certain precautions, then I'm protecting myself and others.
Josh, go ahead.
Coach, over the summer, I think Bruce Feldman had Boogie Basham as like one of the greatest athletic freaks or whatever the name of that list is this year. And last week, you told me that you've talked to Boogie and that one of his goals is to be a top 10 draft pick. Just, I'm interested what those conversations look like and what might be an example of something you've seen him do, on a football field. Not many players you've coached are able to do.
Well, I mean, Boogie loves football. I think the idea of not playing never even crossed his mind. He just loves playing football. And so really that discussion with him was back in December and January. And when he made the decision to come back, he knew where his evaluation was last spring. He knows where he wants it to go. And he just goes out there and competes hard every day. We scrimmaged the other day, and he got in there in the very first play. He made a tackle. He's a good football player, and I'm really excited to watch his season.
Was there a moment where you knew he had the potential to be that special?
Well, I think Boogie flashed. If you go back to the NC State game in 2018, I mean, he made a play in that game chasing something from the backside that he ran down a running back, and he was the backside end. So Boogie has always made hustle plays. He's always made effort plays. He's a good pass rusher. But every year, his development as an overall player, his ability to be physical against the run, to hold the C gap, his ability to diagnose plays and recognize stances and have counter moves and pass rush. Those are all the things that people who love football and who want to be great work on, and Boogie's working on those things all the time. I mean, he's the guy that coach me, coach, make me better. It's just, you keep feeding him, and he's a sponge for knowledge with pass rush or technique or how to read an offensive tackle set or how to execute the twist. He just has a desire to become a better football player.
All right, Coach, I think that'll wrap us up for today.
All right. Hey, good to see everybody. I think all of us, there's lunches that we're accumulating here that we're owed. I think everybody in the media would agree with that, right?
At least 3 trips to Bibbs, yes.
We can even mix it up a little bit, but yeah, Bibbs would be a good call. Amanda, you going to come out for that or? Okay, good. We're getting commitments here from everybody.
I'll be at Bibbs.
Okay. Well, good. Hey, I hope everybody's doing well and staying safe, and, knock on wood, hopefully we'll be playing a college football game here in about 2.5 weeks. But thanks for following us and your questions and doing research on us. I always enjoy meeting with you. Even you, Josh.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks,
Dave. Thanks, Will.